are back in the RV&A Teaching Kitchen in Bridgefield, Connecticut. We spent our day at the Danbury's Farmer Market getting some fresh produce, and now we're gonna make a complete meal. Today we're gonna be making fish tacos with a cabbage coleslaw, homemade pico, and side of street corn. To get us started, I am gonna start us off with the fish and the cabbage. So I have already let this fish marinate for about 15 minutes. I let it marinate in a little concoction I made myself of 3 tablespoons olive oil, 1 teaspoon paprika, 1 teaspoon cumin, 1 teaspoon chili powder, and 1 juice of a lime. So as you can see, the recipe actually called for a vegetable oil. While vegetable oil is relatively good to cook with, it does have a high smoke point. It's really not the most nutritious oil there is. Olive oil, on the other hand, is what we would consider more nutritious, but again, it does have a relatively low smoke point, meaning that you're gonna use more of it to cook to cook what you want to cook. So I'm going to switch things up today, and we are going to spray our pan with a little bit of avocado oil. Avocado oil is a mono-unsaturated fatty acid, meaning it has anti-inflammatory properties. And so while we cook that up for the fish, actually I'm just going to let that heat for a little while longer, and we are going to put the fish on there. Today I chose cod. Now you can make this recipe with cod, tilapia, really any white flaky fish will do. I chose cod because it was a good price at the grocery store, but it's also very nutritious. So it is a relatively low calorie food. Okay, this looks like it's heating up. So it's relatively low calorie. I'm just gonna start with 1 piece here, and we're gonna do about that. I'm actually gonna lower this. I'm gonna turn this on for 5 minutes. So it's relatively low calorie for 3 ounces, which is about the size of your palm. 3 ounces is generally the amount of protein that you want with every meal. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, you want to have some sort of protein in there, and you can always use your palm of your hand as some sort of guidance. That's a 3 ounce. So if that's an egg, chicken, fish, even that totally, that's just a good rule of thumb. So it's got about 90 calories for that 3 ounces, 1 gram of fat, and the fat is not a saturated fat. It is some, omega-3s, polyunsaturated, which are anti-inflammatory. And it has 19 grams of protein in it. Now this protein is really high quality protein, meaning that it has all the essential amino acids to facilitate protein muscle synthesis, which is really important, if you're somebody more, it's important for, part of a healthy diet, specifically in the elderly, to offset any muscle loss, especially, and as well as athletes who are doing some sort of workout regimen that requires strength and resistance. But protein is appropriate for everybody. So that's a little bit about the fish. We of course will be pairing it. It is a taco, right? So we will be pairing it with, I chose corn tortillas today. No specific reason other than it tastes really good. It's generally unprocessed. I think it's light, it's a little bit lighter than perhaps a whole wheat tortilla, which is totally another good option. You might get a little bit more fiber in the whole wheat tortilla, but I thought the corn would go a little bit better with the recipe as a whole. Now, one thing I want to point out, you just bear with me for a second. One thing I like to say is, I can tell you, hey, we're gonna make fish tacos with cabbage slaw, and homemade pico and corn. And you can make that recipe almost 1,000 different ways. And it'll all range on, some sort of continuum to really, really healthy, and really not that healthy. And when I say healthy, what does that mean? I mean, nourishing, fueling, having an adequate amount of protein, fiber, energy, calories, and micronutrients. Unhealthy would be something that's high in like saturated fats, high calories, but with not a lot of nutrition, meaning no micronutrients, no fiber, no balanced energy. So back to the corn tortillas. The reason that I chose, I chose this brand, but really the brand has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. I always encourage people to look at the back of the label, and you want to look for something, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme, but you want to look for something that is highest in protein, highest in fiber, lowest in sodium, lowest in saturated fats, and the lowest in added sugar. So these corn tortillas, for example, are 100 calories for two. But again, I don't like to focus on the calories really. I like to focus on the nutrition. So more importantly, there's 3 grams of protein in 2 corn tortillas. There's no added sugars. There's 15 milligrams of sodium, which is really small compared to our daily value, which is about 2,000, 2,300 milligrams. And there's no saturated fat. So I felt that these were a good option to help keep this meal pretty healthy. So while that is cooking, we're gonna start with the cabbage. Now, as you can see, I already chopped up the ingredients and laid them out. And I chose a red cabbage because it is really high in fiber and vitamins A and K as well. So for this recipe, it's relatively easy. What I am thinking is after the fish is cooked, we can lay out the tacos with, top it with a cabbage slaw, top it with the homemade pico we're gonna cook up eventually, and then have it with the side of street corn. But we'll get to those 2 recipes. For right now, you can see I did about 2.5 cups of this purple cabbage. You can do really any color, it doesn't really matter. You're still gonna get the fiber content as well as the micronutrient content as well. So I did right here is a juice of 1 lime, added 3 tablespoons of cilantro. This is 1 fresh jalapeno. Again, the majority of these ingredients are from the Danbury's Farmers Market. So I definitely encourage you to check it out before the season is over. And then lastly, what's a little unique is we have this mayonnaise, but instead of just any old mayonnaise, because mayonnaise can be really high in saturated fat, and this is what I mean. I always encourage you to look at the label because you can make even a pizza or a hamburger or whatever relatively nutritious, and that's really our goal here. We still want to keep the pleasure in food. We just want to increase the nutrition while we're doing that. So this is 1/4 mayonnaise, and I chose this mayonnaise because, and I'm going to pull out the label over here, so you can see that this mayonnaise is made with olive oil. So again, if you look at the back, mayonnaise generally is going to be a little bit higher in calories. Again, that's okay. I'm not too concerned about the calorie content. I'm concerned about the nutrition content. But what's interesting about this mayonnaise is that there is 1 gram of saturated fat. So that's a lot lower than what you would really usually find in any other sort of mayonnaise. And it has mono and polyunsaturated fats, which are the type of fats that are high in omega-3s and also known to be anti-inflammatory. And you can see here it says omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid. That's what ALA means. That is a plant-based, alpha-linolenic acid is a plant-based essential omega-3 fatty acid, meaning we need to eat it from our diet to get the benefits of it, meaning our body can't synthesize it using other sort of fatty acids. So it's really crucial we get that from our diet, and it's been shown to have favorable benefits in prevention of cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, and there is more research coming out that there is some favorable benefits of omega-3s in improving brain health, including memory and cognition. And I also forgot in this recipe, so the cabbage slaw, we are going to mix it up, and it also called for a little bit of honey, which I thought was pretty unique. And I'm not going to really measure it out. I'm just going to give a little squirt there just to give it some sweetness and play with the flavors a little bit. Another thing that I did that I always encourage you to do during your meals is whenever a recipe calls for some sort of vegetable and fat, always increase the amount of vegetable a little bit and decrease the amount of fat. So for example, for this cabbage slaw, it called for 2 cups of cabbage and 1/2 a cup of mayonnaise, and a little bit more honey than I put in. Now that's not usually really that necessary. So as you heard me say earlier, I did 2.5 cups of cabbage and 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. And trust me, coupled with the fish that we've got going, the pico, everything else we've got working, you're not going to need that extra fat to kind of increase the flavor profile. I really think that, and you can see here, it's certainly covered between the mayonnaise, the honey, and the lemon juice. It's certainly covered and really is taking shape of that coleslaw. Not so dry anymore, but you're still going to get that fiber and the micronutrients from the cabbage themselves. And as we're moving over to the fish, this fish looks like it's starting to heat up nicely. You can tell it gets done when it starts to get that flaky, starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, which we can see is happening. So I'm probably going to give that about 1 more minute. And while I do so, oh, it smells really good. And while I do so, I'm just going to lay out our corn tortillas. Now, it's all about preference. You can have these toasted, or you can just kind of have them straight. It's really whatever you like. I think for right now, I'm going to keep them untoasted just so I can plate this, and then we can get started on the pico and the corn so we can get eating as soon as. By the way, so when I originally purchased it, I purchased about a little over 1 pound of cod. And you can see I still have some left over here. You can see it's quite enough for 3 tacos. Usually I'd recommend about 2 tacos, but you know, the amount that somebody eats is going to be totally different depending on their appetite, their goals, their body weight, their age, their sex. So, you know, really hard to say, but generally speaking, what I purchased and what I'm preparing today is more than enough for, like, generously 4 to 5 servings. And so this meal, you know, it does take a little bit more time. It's perhaps not one of my quickest recipes, but it's definitely worth it. It's, you know, it's a good idea if you've got guests over, or it's a Friday or Saturday night, and you know, you want to try something a little bit different, or maybe even impress somebody. I definitely recommend going to this recipe. And before I do that, I'm just going to, all right. And now, let me turn this timer on. I forgot last time. I did about 5 minutes on each side, maybe a little bit less. And then we're just going to top this with about a spoonful of the cabbage slaw. And again, we're not done yet, even though in theory you could technically eat this right now. And actually I want to point out that what's really great about this recipe and why you could eat it right now without even doing the homemade pico or the corn is that, you know, generally we want to eat every single, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, we want our meals to be a complete meal. I say this all the time. A complete meal has a nice balance of fruits and or vegetables. You know, generally this would be like a dinner recipe, so totally okay that we, you know, we're not going to have any fruits with it. Maybe our fruit is going to be with the dessert. But nevertheless, you know, you want the majority of your meal to be vegetables. Well, you can see we've got that. And corn, yes, is considered a vegetable. And then you want 1/4 of your plate to be some sort of whole grain or minimally processed carbohydrate, the corn tortillas as well. So kind of doubles as like a source of energy, carbohydrate, as well as a vegetable. And then we've got our lean protein. So, you know, even though we've still got more to go, this right here, which I did in like 10, 15 minutes, is totally acceptable as a balanced, nutritious meal. Though I would still recommend adding in a little bit more vegetables, whether that's just chopping up some fresh greens that you've got left over in your fridge, adding a little bit of the olive oil and leftover lime juice, just to give it a little bit more vegetables. And again, your vegetables are usually going to have that high fiber, which helps with bowel regulation, and also helps with weight management, and also lowering total and bad cholesterol levels. So that's really one of the reasons we want to keep our vegetable content high in all of our meals. Fruit does a very similar thing as well. And protein and carbs. So yeah.